Hey, Care Partners, Teresa Youngstrom here. In my world, we talk a lot about brain health and different things that we can do for brain health. We've talked about diets, we've talked about our fluids, we've talked about getting our sleep as another vital thing. But I've brought you something else today and a special person who really had a vision for ways that we can also work on our brain health. Let me tell you about my new friend and colleague, Denise Medved. So, Ageless Grace Brain Health, and by creator and founder Denise Medved. You need to know about this. This is a fitness and wellness program consisting of 21 simple tools for lifelong comfort and ease that activate the primary functions of the brain by stimulating neuroplasticity, your ability to change the form and function of your brain through play, fun, experimentation, imagination, spontaneity, developed by Denise Medved. Ageless Grace is designed to be practiced in a chair. So the brain must figure out how to perform the exercises from a seated position, which also allows anyone of any age or ability to participate and benefit from these simple exercises. I was so intrigued that I had to take a class from Denise. But Denise has been featured on national television. She's done TEDx talks on neuroplasticity in publications such as American Fitness, and she's internationally acclaimed, guys. And so we're bringing you someone who really has experimented. She had watched her parents go through some things, and I know she's going to share her amazing story with you today. Please help me welcome Denise Medved.
Hi. It's so
Hey,
nice to be here, Teresa. Thank you for having me.
my pleasure for sure. And just need you to know how much I enjoyed taking your class recently. It was tremendous, and I really learned so much. And yeah, it was very intriguing and very physically wonderful. But you need to tell me, there's more to this story. What got you started going down this pathway?
Well, really, three things. And the first thing was very personal to me. I was born with spina bifida, and I would describe it as a mild case of spina bifida. I was not in a wheelchair as a young person, although I was told when I was 21 that I would be in a wheelchair by the time I was 40. But lucky for me that the chief of surgery at Hospital for Special Surgery in New York City also told me that we could do surgery that might prevent you from being in a wheelchair, but it might not. It might actually make it worse. Or, and he shook his finger at me and said, you could exercise, move, dance every day of your life, and you're highly likely to be able to avoid this from happening if you are able to be dedicated enough to really move. And he again shook his finger and said, not just once or twice a week, but every day you need to move. So, because of that, I, from a very young age, have always taken fitness classes and movement classes and dance programs. And then I got started getting certified and everything because I discovered early on that I wasn't very disciplined, even though it meant my health and well-being, and that I didn't always do it on my own. So I started getting certified, and I started teaching classes before I went to work and after I came home from work, morning and evening classes, and doing things at home on my own, but mostly for a class so that I had someone waiting on me, and then I knew I had to show up. So the second thing was that my dad was very inspirational as a physical fitness person. He was born and raised, his family immigrated to the United States, and he learned to speak English when he was 7 years old. And so English as a second language was not as easy for him. It made him not really interested in reading or doing crossword puzzles or things that they were saying at the time would really help your brain stay healthy and fit for the rest of your life. What he did was he got physical. He exercised and he was a gymnast and he started lifting weights. He was a sculptor and an artist by trade. And so he decided that he could sculpt his own body. And he became a bodybuilder, but not just any bodybuilder. He became Mr. Tennessee, Mr. Wisconsin, Mr. Dixie. He won Best Back and Abdominals in Mr. America and also
Wow.
Best Back and Abdominals in Mr. Universe. So he was very physical, very. I can remember as a child walking along with him, and we would come, like, say, to a stone wall, and he would say, let's jump up there and walk on the wall, and so up we'd go and walk on the wall. He was just, everything he did was sort of like a physical game. Third thing was my mom. And I used to refer to my mom as a brainiac. She studied, she read, she took courses, she taught courses, she did word games, she did puzzles, she did the London Times and the New York Times crossword puzzles in ink. She read 2 or 3 books a week, real books, serious books. She's the only person I personally know who read the entire Encyclopedia Britannica, if you remember what that is,
Of
from
course.
cover to cover. She was always interested in intellectual pursuits, mental pursuits. So, in fact, she was doing every single thing, not just one or two, but every single thing that they were saying. If you do these things, you will have great brain health. You'll have cognitive function. You don't have to worry about anything.
Hmm.
But now, on the other hand, she did nothing physical. She was not a sports person. She didn't like to swim or dive or play tennis or any of those types of things. What she liked to do was sit, and she liked to read, and she liked to study, and she liked to teach. So, shocking to me, in early 2000s, I think it was 2001, she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And I thought, how can that be? My mom does everything. She does everything more than anybody I know to
Right.
keep her brain fit. And so immediately I started doing research on the internet. And now, of course, you have to remember when this was. Believe it or not, even though there are millions of research studies now on this topic, the
Hmm.
word neuroplasticity did not even exist on the internet. So
Sure.
I didn't know it, so I couldn't Google it. But when I Googled brain health or cognitive function or mental capacity, the only things that came up, guess what? Were be sure you do your crossword
Crossword.
puzzles, be sure
Hmm.
you do your games of words. So I kept doing research, and immediately, because I knew from my own experience that physical movement made me feel better. I wasn't sure how it linked to the brain, but it made me feel better. I thought, well, let me start figuring out some things maybe we could do that might stimulate the brain, if we have to figure out how to do them. Well, as I was figuring out my own idea for what we could do to have better brain health, Harvard Medical School published the first research study that said word games, puzzles only make you better at word games and puzzles.
Oh,
They
wow.
do not delay cognitive decline. And I was like, right, I knew it. I knew it had to be true. Well,
Hmm.
then all kinds of neuroscientists, researchers, physicians who are in the neurological field started doing research and studies. And pretty quickly, the next discovery was that the primary purpose of the brain was to control movement of the body. Now, yes, the brain can plan a retirement plan, it can make a painting, it can do so many things, but its primary purpose, why is it in the body, is to control movement of the body. And if you think about it, what we do as human beings is move everything. I mean, even if you don't move anything else, you blink your eyelashes, right? You
Yep.
swallow. Everything is based on movement. And so that's what the brain controls. And the way it controls it is through the central nervous system. The brain is the boss, and then there's the spinal cord, and then there is all the nerves that travel out through the body. Fascinating thing to me is, for example, there are 7,000 nerve endings in this hand.
Wow.
7,000 in this hand, 7,000 nerve endings in my right foot, and 7,000 nerve endings in my left foot. So what those nerve endings do is, of course, travel throughout the body, but they are the delivery system for messages and information from the brain to the rest of the body, and vice versa. The rest of the body gives information to the brain. So what neuroplasticity is the ability of the brain and the central nervous system to actually change its form and function regardless of our age. And then that was the next study, that there is such a thing. The brain is elastic, the brain is plastic, the brain is mobile. It can actually change regardless of your age if stimulated and prompted by certain things. And then they came out with a study that said exercise, physical exercise, is the best exercise for the brain. So I started putting all this together and I went, yes, I know about physical exercise. I've been doing this since I was 21 years old. And at
Mhm.
this time, I was about 52, 53 years old. And I said, okay, I can figure this out with the help of, I was teaching another program called NIA. Was on the training faculty for the NIA program at the time, which is a combination of martial arts, dance arts, and healing arts. And I was teaching at this hospital that was a top 100 hospital in the nation. So I said to them, I have this idea, I have this program I'm working on, and I wonder if you'd let me do pilot programs here and then give me feedback. And they said, sure, wonderful. What a great idea. A program that might make people have a healthy brain. And so I started figuring out what to do to affect the brain, but not only the brain, but the primary physical skills that we need to stay optimally functional for the rest of our lives. And hence the 21 tools of Ageless Grace were born. And each of the 21 tools activates all 5 primary functions of the brain. But each of the 21 tools also has a focus or something that you put your attention on while you're practicing them or while you're teaching them. And each of those things that we focus on is a physical skill. So things like joint mobility, upper body strength, stimulating neuroplasticity, power and leverage, muscle mass, coordination, balance, respond, react, and recover speed, fall prevention, all
Mm.
those things that we need to do physically. There's a tool that focuses on that. Now, each tool also has maybe 10 benefits. I mean, we may be focusing on upper body strength, but guess what? We're also working the core. We may be working the spinal column. We may be developing joint mobility, but our brain, as we practice it or as we teach it, is focused on, gee, what I'm attempting to do here is create upper body strength. And so all of the movements that we make are also very different from any fitness program I've ever been part of. And like I say, I'm kind of certified in everything because I was so
I saw
used
that.
to finding, well, I was used to saying, oh, aerobics, oh, this kind of technique, oh, that, oh,
Mhm. Martial
trampoline, oh,
arts, right.
yeah, martial arts, let me do all these things and I'll keep moving. And part of the reason for that was, quite frankly, I got bored because my mission was to exercise, move, dance every day. And I was doing the same things over and over. I ran for a while. And after all, I was like, oh, I'm tired of running every morning. And I'm not bashing any of these things. I'm just saying that the number one reason people don't keep up with an exercise program, even though they know that they feel better from it or it gives them great benefits, the number one reason is boredom.
Mm,
The number two reason is they don't have time. The
mm,
number three reason is it's too complicated. It
mhm.
requires equipment, or it requires getting in your car and driving someplace, or it requires, a teacher that's going to be right there with you while you do it, or you won't be able to do it on your own. So my background between my mom, who had all the mental skills except she had Alzheimer's. And my dad, who really didn't do any mental skills at all, but was sharp as a tack right until the day he died, because
Mm,
what he focused on was physical movement. And he was constantly, now some people might do the same thing over and over. My dad happened not to. My dad was always interested. Like I said, he would jump up on a stone wall and we'd walk on the top of the wall. He would see a swing set, and he'd reach up and grab the top of the swing set and see if he could swing with his hands, almost like parallel bars or uneven parallel bars. He was always doing something physical and sharp as a tack. So I started putting all this together, as simple as it sounds, and doing research on the internet, and then taking courses. I took every course that had anything to do with the brain. If it had the word brain in it, I said, "Oh, sign me up for that." And then I also went to a graduate program in gerontology, and then I also enrolled in the Neuroscience Academy out of Sydney, Australia, and graduated from the Neuroscience Academy. Wonderful background in education with Dr. Sarah McKay, who's one of the leading neuroscientists in the world today. And
awesome.
she and I talk regularly now and stay in touch with each other because she thinks this program is simply, and I put that word there first, simply wonderful for people who want to do something for their
I do
brains.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I'm so impressed, and I just wanna say how what a blessing your parents were to you and,
yeah,
encouraging and what examples and, you had challenge when you're born, yet you overcame all of that, and, were determined to overcome all of that, and then you had this incredible revelation early on that, "Hey, the way mom did it and the way dad did it, but then look who ended up getting brain change." And
right.
so that is incredible, and then you continue to take that information and develop this incredible program. So you're saying we can still improve our brains even later in life?
Absolutely. And that is, again, one of the research discoveries. I mean, since 2001, there have been millions of papers written on neuroplasticity and cognitive function and how to improve it, how to maintain it, how all these different things. But I was early on, for whatever reason, last gift of my mom, I was early on in being curious and wondering what we could do.
Love it.
So, it turns out I was on the right track. And I always say that I honestly think that every experience in my life sort of came together in the creation and the marketing and getting the message out in the world of Ageless Grace Brain Health.
Mhm.
My work was marketing, branding, public relations in New York City and later in California. I worked with Fortune 1000 companies, and I didn't actually work with products like toothpaste or hairspray or makeup. I worked with branding, like what is the message of this program, this service. So it very came naturally to me to be able to explain to people what it is we're doing, why we're doing it. So, for example, also early on, they did know this before they knew about neuroplasticity, is I learned about the five primary functions of the brain. Now, obviously, there are sections of the brain: the frontal cortex, the reptilian brain, this all those different things. I'm not talking about the anatomy of the brain. I'm talking about what does the brain do? What are its primary functions? So. There are lots of different explanations for it. And we decided again, because this whole program, we wanted to be simple enough for everyone to be able to teach it, that you didn't have to have years of education to offer this program and spread the word in the world. Everyone should be. It should be simple enough for everyone to be able to do it so that anyone could do it, whether you're in a wheelchair, whether you're a triathlete, whether you're a child, whether you have Alzheimer's, anyone should be able to do it. And that it would be fun and playful and different every time you do it for two reasons. Different so that you are actually stimulating neuroplasticity by doing something that you don't already know how to do, or by doing something that you know how to do, but doing it differently than you've ever done it before. Those are the two big things that stimulate neuroplasticity. But then we also wanted it to be simple enough for everyone to be able to practice it on their own. There's volumes of research that show if you do something like this once or twice a week for say 45 minutes, but then do another 10 minutes of it a day in between the next time you do the class or the 30 or 45 minutes of it, that you will not only maintain what you've achieved during those class periods by just doing 10 minutes a day of it, but you will start to actually improve. Your graph goes up, your brain function starts to improve. And that's true regardless of your age. Now, up until maybe a little over a decade ago, they believed that we couldn't change the brain.
Right.
And the reason they thought that was because of when they looked at brains, they saw very little change, if any, after the age of late teens, early 20s.
Mhm.
Now we know why. The why is that we start to specialize. When we're children, we just play. We'll do anything. Oh, throw the ball. Oh, jump rope. Oh, run around, play tag with their friends. Oh, we're just having a good time. We're playing, and we didn't even know it, but we were firing neurons. We were getting our neurons to wire together as well as fire together. We were creating neural pathways, which are message highways, information highways that I mentioned before between the brain and the body and the body and the brain. But the more you practice something, the deeper the groove gets, so to speak, so that you do it more quickly. So, like, it was challenging for all of us to learn to walk the first time we ever did it.
Mhm.
And it might have taken us weeks or months, right? But once we started to learn and we got better and better at it, most of us, unless we have an injury or a trauma, we're like, okay, I just walk. I just get up and I walk. I don't have to think about it. That's because those neural pathways, the brain has created it to exactly know what to do. It doesn't have to learn anything new. It's doing it over and over again. But once you're doing something that you really know how to do, well, you aren't firing very many neurons
Mhm.
anymore. So if I decided to learn to skip when I was 72 and I'd never skipped before, now my brain would be saying, whoa, like, how do we do this? Like, what's the rhythm? Like, which leg lifts, which foot lifts? What do you do with your head and arms? And then I would be firing neurons because I'm learning to skip because I had never done it before. Or, for example, if I said, gee, I wonder if you could skip backwards. Well, I don't have any idea if you can or not. But if I tried it and tried to figure it out, I'd be firing neurons. So that idea of playing with a new concept, experimenting, taking a little risk of looking silly or stupid or whatever we do would be firing neurons. And so what happens as we get late teens, early 20s, we start to specialize, as I mentioned, meaning, oh, I'm a tennis player. I play tennis 3 times a week. And so I did it over and over again. And guess what? Now I'm not firing very many neurons because I
Mhm.
know what I want to do for my forehand. I know how I want to do my backhand. I know how I want to serve. It's all ingrained in me. Those neural pathways have been created. But if I were to go on the tennis court and try to serve with the other hand instead of the one I normally do, or if I tried to make my forehand my backhand and my backhand my forehand, switch sides, now I'm firing lots of neurons to stimulate those 5 primary functions of the brain. And those 5 primary functions of the brain, I'm going to go through them quickly, but they're strategic planning, memory and recall, analytical thinking, creativity and imagination, and kinesthetic learning, or learning through the body first, and then the brain kicks in. So that makes an acronym, the first letter of all those, and the acronym is SMAC. And that's the sound of a neuron firing. We made it very simple, even though you can read lots of places, long, detailed descriptions of what those 5 functions are. We simplified it like we simplified everything else so that everybody can understand it. Okay, I'm firing. I'm doing SMAC, strategic planning, memory and recall, analytical thinking, creativity and imagination, and kinesthetic learning. And that will keep your entire brain functional. So, what happened was they started to see people that were, 55, and they ran their first marathon. They had never been a runner before. And they went, wow, look how their brain changed. You can change your brain, because that was new to them. It was something different. The brain was working. Or someone decided, like, I'm going to become a painter. And I've never painted before, but Grandma Moses, for example, I'm going to start painting. And it is a physical thing, painting, right? Much more physical than you might think it is. And then now you're firing neurons. So they started to see more and more people challenging themselves by learning something new. I'm going to learn to play the violin. It doesn't matter that I'm 60 years old. I've always wanted to play the violin. Guess what? Now I'm starting to fire neurons by doing something new. And if I were to learn to play the violin and get pretty good at it, but I switched sides and started playing on this side, now my brain's like a whole new thing. Like, what? Like, wait a minute, let me figure this out. How do we do this on the other side? So, we can change the brain. It's fascinating. And we can do it ourselves. We
Mhm.
don't need a doctor to help us do that. We don't need to study textbooks. We can actually do it ourselves. And one of the ways to do that is to practice these simple tools that we have in Ageless Grace. They're playful, they're silly, they're actually based on the concept of play, just like when we were kids, as I mentioned. They have silly, playful names so that they're easy to remember. I mean, it's a whole lot easier to remember the term spaghetti spine, gives you an idea of what we're doing and what we're working
Mhm.
on, than it is to say, oh, we're going to do some lateral spinal flexion now. And remember that so you can practice it next week, right?
Right.
So some of the tools names are things like dive in. Gives you a clue that it must have something to do with swimming, diving, right? And then maybe with upper body strength, because that's what swimming and diving do. Or team fit, which is pretending, acting out, moving as if you're really doing a sport. We don't have the tennis racket. We're not on the tennis court, but we're serving. We're running up to the net. We're doing our forehand and backhand. And then the beauty of this program is that it's done seated. Now, right away, people's brains go to, oh, I'm not ready for that yet. I don't have to sit and do
Or they might
exercise.
think it's too easy. That's
Right.
just
Yeah.
too
Like
easy.
that's too easy. Like I
And
don't
I
want
can
to
just
sit down.
affirm them.
I want to really work out, right? I
Yeah.
want to work
That
out.
they're wrong if they think it's too easy because 'cause I've
Yeah.
done it.
Yeah. Tell your
Yeah.
experience with doing
Yeah.
Ageless Grace for 2 or 3 days.
Absolutely. Because I would think, I go to the gym, I'm in pretty good health and okay, this'll be okay, I'll get some stretching out of this. But I was totally surprised the next day that my core was talking to me and was like, "Oh my goodness." So, it really was incredible. And, in my history, been a nurse almost 40 years, and I can tell you, I remember when I was listening to a speaker who said, we can develop new pathways in our brain. And it was a talk with Parkinson's.
Yeah.
And because some had felt, well, when the damage is done, it's done, and all you do is decline. But this gentleman was saying, oh, no, no, no. We've learned you can develop new pathways and you can train your body to walk a little bit of a different way. And so when you start talking about this, I'm like, oh my goodness, yeah. And like you, when my friends were watching movies, I was on Netflix trying to watch more, videos on how I could learn about brains because that's what I was called to do. So I love the fact that you've gone and taken every class in the book. It's so great.
So,
So
all your listeners and audience, now you know you have two brain nerds on
yeah,
this at the same time.
absolutely. Absolutely, 2 brain nerds, yeah, and but I can't it's my calling, it's what I have to do. So tell me, do I just need to practice once a day? Do I need once a week? Or how often are you suggesting we need to do this Ageless Grace?
Well, I would suggest that you do a longer length of time, at least a couple times a week in an
Yeah.
ideal situation. But needless to say, even if you're going to do 45 minutes one time a week, that's better than not doing it at all. But
Mhm.
what's important, let's just say you did it Mondays and Thursdays for 35 or 45 minutes. What's important is the time in between, because what you've done is you've increased the neurons in your brain, you've increased the firing, you've increased the wiring, you've brought your brain up to a certain cognitive level. And then from that point on, once you've done that, it starts to decline. And that's different from person to person, depending on your DNA or your physical wellness and ability, but it starts to decline on some level or another. So if the next day you were to do 10 minutes to just remind your brain of what you had been doing. Now, one of the tools is called Spelling Bee, and we actually, and it stimulates neuroplasticity. We actually spell like a word with our nose and with their elbow and with their belly button, and we spell with the back of the body and our foot on the floor. So, like, for example, if you said, gee, I remember spelling bee from my class that I took with Teresa, then I would like to do it. I'll remember that one. Well, then another one's called Shake It Up Baby. And you literally shake a body part at a time. You shake an arm, another arm, your back, your belly button, your knees. You shake all these things, and that's from myofascial tissue, which has so much to do with aging. It's the what's supposed to be the supple sliding tissue between your skin and your muscle. And if it's not moved and exercised, it doesn't stay supple. It starts to get stiff. And then we feel like we're very old. It's hard to get out of the bed. The feet hurt. It's hard to walk. Your spine might not straighten up. And it eventually goes away once you get up and start moving around. But that is stiff myofascial tissue. And so we've got a tool for that, because all these things that affect the quality of life. So you might say, oh, shaking, I can remember that one. That's real easy. Well, another one that is a little complicated, which is wonderful, is called gentle geometry. And you can do it with me right now.
I'd
You
love
can't see
that.
my
Yeah.
whole body, but do it with me as I guide you verbally.
Mhm.
Take one hand and make a circle. So gentle geometry is based on shapes, geometric shapes. And after you do this a little while, then take your the opposite leg, and try to draw a triangle in the air with your opposite leg. And what I always say is that Ageless Grace also works your sense of humor. And of course, laughter, humor, joy is all a part of staying youthfully functional, not only physically, but mentally and emotionally and spiritually as well. So you've got a circle with the one hand, the opposite foot is making a triangle. And of course, you're not supposed to be able to do this. You're just thinking about how would I do it? So then add a horizontal line with the other hand, like, oh my gosh, I can't do this, right? It's crazy. And you have to remind yourself, now, what was I doing with this hand? Oh, I was drawing a circle. Oh, here comes my hand that's doing the line. Oops, my foot completely forgot about making a triangle. And then we do that to music, and we do it to one song. We do each tool to one song. So halfway through the song, you switch. And then this hand is making the circle, and this opposite foot is making the triangle, and this opposite hand is making the horizontal line. So you're not supposed to be able to do it. You are supposed to attempt to do it and focus on it and be thinking about it as you're doing it. So someone might say, okay, now we had 12 tools yesterday from my 45-minute class, but I remember spelling bee, and I remember shake it up baby, and I remember gentle geometry. So then on your own, you would play one song and do one of those three tools. Then you play a second song and do one of those three tools. And then you play a third song and do one of those three tools.
So it's just for
So
several minutes each.
yeah. And
Yeah.
so the average song is about 3.5 minutes long. So if
Right.
you did three of those, that's about 10 minutes of movement and of focusing on what you're doing, your movement, so that you're actually firing neurons. And then, by Thursday, you have another class. Ideally, you do it 10 minutes a day in between classes. So if I took a class on Monday and didn't take another one for over a week until the following Thursday, ideally I would be doing 10 minutes a day of whatever I could remember in between. Now, we do on our website, agelessgrace.com, we do have videos that you can buy, that you can download, or hard copy
And I purchased
DVDs.
the cards. The cards are wonderful to help remind me what a juicy joint is. So
Yes, exactly. We have flashcards. Everybody learns differently. So the flashcards give people cues. The DVDs, you can actually look at the video on your computer or on your phone or on your DVD or DVR player and follow along. And then there's a playbook. And it's called a playbook on purpose, not a workbook, but it is kind of a workbook in the sense that it walks you through what each of the tools are. It has a little checklist: which ones did I do today, which ones did I do the next day, and you can look at your chart, kind of like when we were kids and we used to get gold stars for doing something. And it gives you little bullet points of ideas of what to do, because that's another thing. The program is spontaneous, and that's why it's different from all other programs. Not only does it combine everything from different walks of life and different kinds of exercise and wellness. It combines the music element, which stimulates the brain. It combines being seated, which causes the brain immediately to figure out why or how would I run the bases and hit a baseball with a bat and run the bases. Like, how would I do that without getting out of my chair? That's why we're seated, so that you have to figure out instantaneously when we say something like serve the tennis ball or pretend you're climbing a ladder. You have to figure out right away that, oh, how would I do that without standing up? Kids are great at this, by the way, because Ageless Grace Brain Health is for anyone with a brain, regardless of your age.
Mhm.
Kids are great at saying, like, oh, let's figure out how to do this. Let's come up with ideas, because kids are spontaneous, very
Mhm.
much so. And so what it teaches us in a class or in a personal practice is to be spontaneous again. So if I'm doing team fit, and today I pretend to play tennis, and then after a minute or so I say, oh, I'm going to pretend to play baseball. Well, then if I do that again, team fit again tomorrow, I might say, I did tennis and baseball yesterday. I think I'll go swimming today, and then I'll pretend like I'm uh, uh, maybe I'm bicycling and I'm riding a bicycle. And so I'm doing something different all the time. So it gives you a framework of team fit, which is all kinds of sports that you can do alone, on a team, with one other person, but you only have roughly 3 minutes to do it in the length of a song. So you quickly choose, like, what am I going to do? And you have lots of choices. Everything's based on imagination and action. So a quick little piece of wonderful information. Uh, Dr. Norman Doidge wrote a book that's called The Brain That Changes Itself. And one of the pieces of research in it is that after, I don't know, I think 3,500 MRIs, they discovered that physically doing an activity lights up certain parts of the brain. But imagining that you are doing that activity lights up almost exactly the same parts of the brain.
Isn't that incredible?
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
It's fascinating. And what we're doing in Asia's Grace is we are imagining it. We don't really have a piano that we're playing or a flute that we're playing, but we are not only imagining that we have it, we're acting it out. Like, I'm
Mhm.
not just thinking, oh, gee, I'm playing a flute now. How would I do that? No, I'm saying, like, okay, how would I play a flute? Oh, how would I play it on the other side? How would I play a violin? Because one of our tools is called Front Row Orchestra, and it's
Mhm.
imagining you're playing different musical instruments. And again, there's thousands of them to choose from, so you don't have to repeat very often. You
Right.
come up with something and you say, oh, today I'm going to do stringed instruments, or today I'm going to do all the instruments in a rock band, or today I'm going to just pretend to play one instrument, and I'm going to see if I can do it really well on both sides of my body, air guitar, and then you do it over here. So as simple and silly as those things are, it shows you how easy it is to change the brain. I actually have a TEDx talk, and it's called Changing Your Brain Can Be as Simple as Child's Play,
Mm.
because that's exactly how we
See
developed
that.
our brains in the first place, right? So,
Absolutely.
yeah. And you work with a lot of older people,
Mhm.
and you work with people who have cognitive decline. So,
Mhm.
how willing they are to play,
Yes.
to laugh, to have a little fun.
And they love the
Um,
music.
yeah, they love the music, and that's kind of like when we were kids. Like, when we were kids, we loved music, and we weren't like going like, I wonder if anybody's going to look at me and see if, I don't know, that if I look silly throwing the ball, right? We just tried it, and
Mhm.
if we kind of liked it, we tried it again, and we tried it again, and we tried it again, and then when we got really good at that, we weren't firing many neurons anymore. We
Right.
didn't
That's
need
what's
to.
incredible. That's what's incredible to connect the dots on, that we have to keep it fresh and new and fun. And so, but what I'm seeing is we can use this with children. We can use this, middle age, but we can use it with silver sneakers. We can use it in memory care. All these things, everyone can participate because we're seated
Absolutely.
too, but it's still so effective and so good. And gosh, I just love all the research you put into this, and it all makes sense. Denise, thank you so much, because this tool is so exciting. Because really, if my mom were still alive, we could do this in her living room and she wouldn't have to go to a gym or
Mhm.
anything, and wouldn't have to, and we could still enjoy this together. And she wouldn't have to get out of her wheelchair, and it would
Right.
still be wonderful.
Some people think, by the way, that it's in done seated because it's for people who are frail or who have some kind of paralysis or who have poor balance. Not that at all. It's
Right.
done, as I mentioned earlier, that the second we ask you to do things you normally do standing and you're in a chair and we say, don't get up, you got to stay in your
Mhm.
chair, that you're engaging the brain. But the big benefit of that is just what you said. Anybody can do it.
Anybody.
I actually had a class of 38 people in wheelchairs for about 2 or 3 years, and
Mhm.
they loved it. They loved it. First of all, it was something they could actually do, you know, and just if anyone's listening who does have any paralysis or any part of their body that doesn't move well, this is really important from a neurological point of view. That, oh, let's just say that my left hand doesn't work as well as my right hand, or vice versa, and we're doing something like pretending to throw a ball. Well, if that other hand won't do it, I say, imagine it. Imagine that that hand is throwing the ball, and then go to this hand. Now imagine the other hand's doing it. Now go back to this hand. And so you're actually doing something that's done in physical therapy for extreme trauma when they're trying to rehabilitate someone who has lost the neurological ability to move that particular part of their body. And like you mentioned earlier about research studies and that they were deciding that you could change your brain
Yeah.
regardless of your age. Part of that came about because they started physical therapists, exercise physiologists started working with people who had some severe injury to their knee, for example. And they would say, I want you to imagine that your knee is running. Or they put their foot in a machine and their machine moved their knee. And they were, guess what? Stimulating the brain to create
Yeah.
new neural pathways in order to allow that knee to work again, at least partly, if not exactly like it was when it used to. So you can get all kinds of regained abilities and in greater range of motion and better balance. And that's one of our tools, balancing act. You can get all
Mhm.
that from practicing these simple things. One thing I like to mention is that there are hundreds of ways to do what we're talking about.
Mhm.
You could take a different route to work every day if you're driving. You could do crossword puzzles upside down. You could do, I mean, there's so many things you could do. You could, if you knit and crochet, you could switch hands and let
Oh,
your dominant hand not be the dominant hand. But guess what? It takes a lot of effort. You have to do it multiple times a day. You have to plan every day, like, what am I going to do differently? And can I do it for, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes? And most of us don't have the energy, the motivation, the
right.
initiative, the resources to do that. So what Ageless Grace is it's been brought together in one program so that you don't have to think about it. It is activating all 5 functions of your brain. It's giving you the 21 physical skills you need to be optimally functional. It's increasing your imagination, your spontaneity. It's social. It's usually done in a group, in a class, so there's social interaction. It's done to music. It's uplifting. It's funny. It causes you to laugh. And
Yeah.
so it's kind of all brought together. I always say it's not rocket science. It is brain science, but it's not rocket science. But it is made easy, and that's the whole idea of this. As I mentioned early on, boredom, lack of time, too complex, having to have an outfit or change or shower after or drive somewhere or have someone
Mhm.
come in to work with you. It's simple. You can do it on your own. And for those who do have moderate to advanced cognitive decline, many of you may have a loved one who has that particular thing going on in their lives right now, you can help them. We have seminars, we have workshops, we have certifications. That's what Teresa did. She's certified to teach
Yep.
classes or to do one-on-ones with people.
Mhm.
And even that doesn't take very long. It
Yep.
takes 14 total hours. And so it's easy to become a certified educator, we call them, educating people that these are the kinds of things you need to do to change your brain and help it stay youthful and ageless
Mhm.
for the rest of your life.
Yep, and we'll sleep better too. I slept better. Oh my goodness, there were so many benefits just to taking the class. Well, Denise, we could go on and on. This has been such a joy to have you here. I love your energy and your passion for this, and just that so many in my audience will be able to use your information. But I want them to know how to get a hold of you too. So please tell us now before we log off, how can they get a hold of you or find out more information?
The easiest way is to go to our website, which is agelessgrace.com. Agelessgrace.com. And on that, you can see on the screen, there's a bunch of words across the top, and one is training. You can tap on that, and it'll give you a schedule of when you could take a seminar, or when you could take a workshop, or when you could get certified to teach. And by the way, I'd like to mention this. A lot of people say, well, I'm 75, I can't get certified to teach. First of all, I'm 72. I teach 8 classes a week. But second of all, two of our educators are 88. One's a man, one's a woman. And they teach Ageless Grace in the retirement communities where they live. One of our educators was 17 when she started teaching this program. And she worked with elderly people because she wanted to go to the community where her grandmother lived and do
Mhm.
something positive and helpful. So anybody of any age can learn to teach us, and any background. We do have nurses like Teresa. We do have people that have dementia practitioner specialist certifications, but we also have people that say, I'm retired and I want to do something that I feel good about that's going to help me and other people. So you can get certified too. It doesn't matter what your background is. And again, that's part of what this program is all about. Uh, there's that commercial that says push the easy button. Well, that's what we're all about. It's easy to get certified. It's easy to teach. It's easy to take and practice. It's easy to share with a family member. We want the whole thing to be as simple as possible. So agelessgrace.com has a blog with all kinds of articles about Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and nutrition and anything you can imagine. If you go on, it'll pop up and it'll say, if you give us your email address, we'll give you a free class that you can download on your computer or on your phone. And you can take that class and redo it many times if you want to. We do have products that teach you how to do classes and do the tools on your own. We have workshops that you can download. I mean, there's lots of information on there, including little video clips of me telling about different things that might interest you. Like I went pretty quickly through the 5 functions of the brain, but there's a video that's maybe 3 minutes long that really talks to you about what those 5 functions are and how you can stimulate them. So it's very comprehensive, as you know, Teresa. You've been
Yeah.
on there.
Yes. Absolutely. It's wonderful. There's great information there. It's for all ages and for all levels of experience, all level of physical ability. This is a really great tool that we're putting out there for you guys. And I appreciate Denise. I appreciate her heart to, gosh, just come up with this amazing plan that so many can benefit from. Thank you again so much for being here. Hey, everybody, I hope that you will like and subscribe and share this information because we haven't talked about this before. This is really special and it's very unique. But guess what? It's very doable. And I'm excited to have taken the course. And I was surprised at how challenging it really was. Yet it was fun. Like I didn't know it was challenging while I was doing it. But I'm just saying that the physical benefit, the mental benefit was so great. I was pleasantly surprised. It was worth every penny and every minute that I dedicated to it. So please go there, like, subscribe, and share this with someone you know who this would really benefit in their lives. Again, thanks again for being here. I have the best audience in the world. You guys are great. You're working so hard, and I'm supporting you. I've got your back, and just never forget that you got this.